Today we're talking to Bebe on talent, and we're going to go straight into our first question on talent and talent management.
So some things are the same and some things are not. Yeah. So one of the things that's the same is globally business is under pressure. Sure. And so people are really concerned about what that means for them as individuals, just as the company is concerned about what it can sustain and how it can get added value and added performance and all those good things. So the people processes remain the same, the sort of basic talent processes remain the same. But when you come into talent from an OD perspective, that's where the nuance comes in. And that's where I have fun there, because it really is about how do you partner to create a shift in a positive way. So what will I say? Some things are the same. Gender is more or less an issue. Whether you're in France or on the islands or anywhere in Africa. So I've all my career worked in very strong engineering firms across industries, and we always hear that you can't find women in engineering. Yeah. And it's true and not true. It's true because, well, clearly in organizations, you don't find women, especially at very senior levels in engineering. So there's something about the way work is organized that from a gender perspective that we need to interrogate in the talent space. And this is one of the things that I'm doing. So one of the, obviously I don't do this in isolation. I work with the HR directors in each country and the leadership team in each country. But one of the things that's interesting for me to see, if we stay on the gender issue, is in most of the countries, women do engineering degrees. Yep. But after that, they just disengage from engineering. And so there's something about how we position engineering that's not attractive to them. And so we need to look at issues of agility in the workplace. We need to look at issues of cultural norms. So in North Africa, and you don't get to be excused from the gender targets because you're in North Africa. Everybody has to step up and do what's required. And you'll hear I think it's an excuse, but you'll hear the statement that women can't be, or women aren't sales engineers because women don't want to. This is the other assumption made on behalf of women. Women don't want to go and talk to people in that sales space. So I find that even though the issues are the same, the nuances are different. Yeah. So there's a real nuance in North Africa at the moment around. You find a lot of women very talented, very strong, very passionate about organization, very animated at the junior levels, and then something just happens and they're lost. And when you find them again, they're sprinklings and they're in functional roles or they're imports. Where in South Africa we have such a wealth, and we have possibly we could do better even still at the more senior levels, but we don't have as much even here this issue of women in engineering. So we have this front office, back office, and back office is more your project management, your all the support functions, even in the technical space. We don't have that divide so much here, and it's beautiful to see, especially the younger women just really going out there, and some of our best employees actually are young Black women in South Africa, just dominating the space. It's beautiful. So that's one. Gender is where you see some difference, and you do see the cultural nuances play out. You do see also one interesting one actually in terms of organizational culture and how you deal with that from a leadership effectiveness perspective is hierarchy and what hierarchy means. It's my experience that North Africa is exceptionally hierarchical, and you see it in the dress. So people
hierarchical being
patriarchal. Yeah, exactly. So it's a double sort of hierarchy in that discourse. So it's hierarchical and it's male hierarchical. I'll give you an anecdote. So I was talking to someone over the weekend, and he said that when he was on an expatriate assignment in North Africa, his team member, the supervisor immediately under him, came to him to say, "You're doing something that's impacting on me. What am I doing? You don't park your car in the basement where all the other directors park their cars." He's like, yeah, but I don't care. I mean, I'll go and park my car wherever I see space. He says, yes, but think about how that positions me in terms of my own peers, because I'm the one with the director who does not park where directors park. So, it's a funny anecdote, but it says something about what hierarchy means in that culture.
And status consciousness.
So if you step back into the talent space, what does that mean in terms of an accelerated talent development program? How successful is it going to be to accelerate women and men, even particularly young men, because hierarchy and patriarchy go with age as well. So it's, so those are the issues that you deal with. You deal with what is real and what is assumed, and then you deal with the culture. And it's a chip by chip by chip breaking. It's really hard. It's a very stubborn shift. Where, in West Africa, it shows up differently. There is still hierarchy. And interestingly, Francophone West Africa I experience as different from Anglophone West Africa. And maybe it's the French versus British influence, who knows. But I also find the level of bureaucracy in Francophone Africa is, it's unusual for me. You'd think one continent or one people, and then zooming in as close as West Africa and seeing that level of difference. I mean, it's people just don't question authority for any reason. So another anecdote, someone saying, but you can't promote that person. So we wanted to promote a high potential person. This was before my time. And the country director of that business, who was a local, said, but I can't give that person the job because the others won't respect him. He's not old enough. The others are older. So these are the things, cultural issues. And this is where you can be very kind of functional about talent management and ignore those issues which are actually insidious, or you can first deal with those issues which take a long time. It takes leadership coaching. It takes walking along the path together. It also takes non-blame. Because we can have a conversation about what got us here, or we can have a conversation about how we move forward. And I find more empowering the conversation about how we move forward.
Sure.
So, and then in Francophone, in Anglophone West Africa, for instance, in Nigeria, you find people kind of very confident, very assertive, but also kind of a little whiny. So the culture is to challenge, but not to come with, and I'm being very generalistic here. So this is, it's not all true for the North. It's not all true for Francophone. It's not all true for West Africa. But these are just patterns that I've observed and had to work with. So it's always about, and I guess you can understand in a system that really is fairly dysfunctional as an economic system, I guess people are very resilient, but also very kind of worn about the system. And so it's about getting it's getting people to align, to buy in, to believe. I think is the thing that in West Africa is, in Anglophone West Africa, is when you can get the people to believe and also answer the what's in it for me question, then you're on the path. So these are the nuances, that you see across it. And I think for me, the challenge in my job is to stay in the place of explorer.
Cool.
And is to stay in the place of just inquiry all the time. It would be easy to come with a toolbox and try and fix, but that would be very foolish because it doesn't serve and it's not sustainable. But when we start getting people to just think critically around, why are we doing this talent thing? What is the outcome? And how does it benefit you personally, but how does it benefit the system as a whole? And sometimes you have that same conversation 5, 10, 15, 20 times, but eventually when we start aligning, it helps. The other thing that I will say is that language doesn't mean the same thing, which is obvious, but it's not. So even in the talent space, what we hold as clear and what we hold as true doesn't necessarily translate across the whole patch. It's so interesting how sociopolitically charged that word is. And this is the bedrock of what we do in talent, because whether you're talking about South Africa or you're talking about North Africa, any place that has had very serious colonial interaction and that is still sustained, potential is not neutral. And the definition of potential is very loaded. It's not objective in any way. And so it's also being courageous enough to recognize that and to make it open. And again, the way that you make it open depends on where you're having the conversation. But then to say, okay, so how, recognizing that we all hold bias, how do we step back into the space of objectivity about what it means to be a young person with potential in the talent space, and why are we doing it, and how can we help them? So those are some of the things. I think specifically for us in Africa, the talent issue is an interesting one because generically speaking, we have a very young workforce that is poorly skilled or unskilled for the most part. And in the North, so whether it's in Europe or in America, the reverse is true. And look, South Africa is different because you have this dichotomy in South Africa of much older, very highly skilled people and much younger people who may be smart but not skilled, because skill comes with experience over time. So one of the tensions that you have in a multinational is it's always easier to send an expatriate, you know, to come and lead the business. Sort it out. What we're finding, though, that the cultural nuances, sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes the expatriate is coming with as much complexity as he's meant to or she's meant to clean out. And also people are becoming more socially conscientized to this talent thing. So not only do people want to see representation at lower levels, they want to see, I mean, if you go to a government or if you go to industry, especially in Africa, and you want to do business on a large scale, they want to talk to people who look and sound like them. And this is part of what talent management needs to facilitate, is how do we create generations of people in Africa, for Africa, who are skilled, who are capable, and who have the right leadership behaviors in a corporate context. So that's some of the tension that you see, is the tension between we're global and we need people to get experience. So we're not only receiving expatriates, we're sending young people out. So we need to hold that balance. You know, we can't whine on the one hand that we have too many expatriates, but on the other hand, we're sending young people out to get experience. So these are some of the real organizational complexities that corporates are dealing with.